Hi. Fairly, pretty, rather, and quite. What's the difference? Which is the strongest? Okay, let's look at an example. Take the word correct. Fairly correct? Quite correct? Pretty correct? Rather correct? Okay. If something is wrong or right, then it is absolute. And we need, in this case, to use quite normally. Absolutely correct, quite correct. If we use fairly, pretty, or rather, it means not more or less, but not completely. The same with incorrect. That's quite incorrect, absolutely wrong. That's fairly incorrect. Most of it's wrong, but not completely. Okay, so quite we need to use with absolutes. Okay, we don't normally use the others, fairly, pretty, or rather, with absolutes. Okay, let's look at another pair. Difficult and impossible. Okay, difficult is a variable, whereas impossible is an absolute. It's an absolute. So, we can say fairly difficult, quite difficult, pretty difficult, and rather difficult. Notice we can also use quite with gradables. Okay, so it's fairly impossible. 6 out of 10. It's quite impossible. Sorry, it's fairly difficult. 6 out of 10. It's quite difficult. 6. Pretty. 6. Rather. 6. Maybe 7 if you want. Any of them. They're the same when they refer to gradables. Things are variables. Okay. But when we use impossible, it's quite impossible. We only need to use quite with this absolute. We don't normally say fairly impossible, pretty impossible, or rather impossible. I can imagine someone saying it in a very posh way. Well, it is fairly impossible to do this. I can hear people saying it, but I don't suggest you do it. Let's look at another example. Cold and freezing. It's quite freezing outside. Okay? Very, absolute, extremely. It's quite cold outside. 6 out of 10. But this now, it's fairly cold outside. 6. It's pretty cold outside. 6. And rather the same. Okay? So, let me sum up. Quite for absolutes. Absolutely correct. But, okay. Fairly, pretty, and rather, not for absolutes. Not fairly impossible. Okay? Fairly, pretty, and rather for gradables. Difficult. Fairly difficult. And notice we can also use quite with these gradables to mean quite difficult. So, there you go. Which is the strongest, which is the weakest? Another question. With these words, it's very important how they are said. That's fairly hard. That's fairly hard. Well, it's fairly hard. It's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive. Well, it's pretty expensive. Rather a long way. It's rather a long way. It depends how you say them. With this words, it's quite a long way. Well, it's quite a long way. With these words, it's important how you say them. And that's what gives them the strength. Okay? Except when we say with quite with an absolute, because that's in a different league. Okay? It's quite impossible. It's quite impossible. Okay, that the stress doesn't change it. It's completely impossible. But it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult. It depends how they say it. I hope that's helped. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating. You could subscribe to my channel. You could add this video to your favorites. You could ask a question. You could make a comment. Or you could just say hi. See you soon.